Go Green.
Reverend Childs,
Here.
Dr. Jacobowitz, not here yet. Ms. Jordan,
Here.
Mr. Lamb,
Here.
Ms. Lau,
Here.
Mr. Michael,
Here.
Mr. Shaughnessy,
Here.
Ms. Shear,
Here.
Mr. Spicer.
Here. Rise for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just play a lacrosse game, football or soccer or something.
Okay, still going.
Have a
Still trying.
motion to adjourn to executive session for the purposes stated.
He's in a hurry.
I'd like to add to, I don't know if it's in there or not, but I'd like to have a brief discussion about a matter confidential because of FERPA.
FERPA?
Confidential because of what?
FERPA.
Oh, FERPA. I thought you said robot.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstains or noes? So I guess most people are, well, almost everyone is new to this building, so in case of an emergency, the exits are marked. And so follow the exit signs. And if everyone would silence their cell phones, that would be appreciated. And there's one resolution coming out of executive session. Resolution EOE 23 for 2019. Be resolved in accordance with Section 3 of the employment agreement with Dr. Stacia Felicello, Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education, that the Board of Education hereby extends the term of her employment agreement for 2 years through June 20th, 2022, and be it further resolved that the Board President is authorized to execute an employment agreement with Dr. Felicello, a copy of which agreement is incorporated by reference within the minutes of this meeting.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? Well, we greatly appreciate your service. Presume you're going to agree to it.
Yes.
You gonna vote? We'll call the question. If there's no more comments, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Unanimous, 9-0.
Yes.
And the next item on the agenda is approval of public comment. Public comment. Participation, has anyone signed up for it? Or anyone who wishes to address the board may come to the podium and do so. Time limit is 2 minutes. Okay. Sometimes you have to call out 2 times.
Then people feel bad and come up and speak, right?
Okay. Approval minutes for the minutes of September 18th, 2019. Have a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
Any corrections or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 9-0 approved. Superintendent's report, Kingston High School, Second Century Project, update from Mr. Tom Clappy. Or I should let Dr. Paolino announce.
That's okay.
It's his
I
report.
won't repeat that, but I will just let everyone know this is a shorter than usual superintendent's report, but don't get used to it. So now the school year is starting, we will be having a much more lengthy superintendent reports starting at our next meeting. So with that, we'll have Mr. Clapper.
talk loud enough. Talk about short, I have a 4-slide presentation today. So the first one, I'm not trying my expertise at this, but that is some kind of video because I put all the photos, and when I saved them, they went to a video. Hopefully it starts. And somehow it got music too. So I'm going to take credit for it, but I have no idea how I did it. This is the high school. This is in the downstairs of Maine. That's a bunch of sprinkler pipe that got delivered today. The electric main switchgear has been replaced. All this piping was removed this week. That's all done. That's another bathroom. So that's the girls' bathroom on the second floor. They found a fireplace in the auditorium. All the seats are covered because they're going to be preserved. All the abatement's done. That's the stage where we're replacing the floor on the stage. Interesting part about the stage, it's half frame and half concrete. So as we got into it, and if you happen by there and you want to watch to see some poor carpentry work, I don't even know how they did it. The boards just kind of wiggled down through the concrete. But they are very solid and very strong, and we're going to reattach right to them. Progress on the project is moving along fairly well. We're still continuing with demolition. Abatement is 100% complete. We have one, well, I shouldn't say 100%, 99% complete. There's one little area to be done yet. They're installing sprinklers in about 5 areas right now. We're replacing the entire sprinkler system from the new water main that we put in phase 1 all the way through to the last head in the attic. We have a wet and dry system, and every piece of pipe is getting replaced. They are working on this first floor for, there's a bunch of original woodwork, chestnut and whatnot, and they're restoring that. We've actually decided on a room number, I believe it's room 105, to be the mock-up room. And they're going to do all the woodwork in there, put in the case cabinets and all that, so it looks like what all the rest of the classrooms are going to look like. And that should be happening in the next month or so. Carpenters are installing the metal partitions, ongoing plumbing and electrical work. We've had a little issue in the basement, the points of tie-ins for the drainage under the slab, under the gang bathrooms at the end of the halls and whatnot. The pipe was not suitable to be attached to. It was just too deteriorated. So we've had a saw cut a little bit further out into the hall, and we're still doing some exploratory work on that to find where we're actually going to make our tie-in in. And out on the site, we are installing lights in the parking lot, in the Sophie Finn parking lot. I guess we should come up with a different name for that, because it's not Sophie Finn anymore. Teachers parking lot. And they're also working on the lighting down by the tennis courts and the bus turnaround. Elsewhere, and other things that are happening as far as construction, the GW project, we had a project go out on the capital outlay, which is a funding mechanism from SED, which allows spending of up to $100,000, including soft costs and all ancillary costs. We put a project out to fix all the holes in the ceilings, repair the plaster, put new blinds in all the classrooms, and we had one bid that was not acceptable because they only bid on the shades. We did a preliminary budget on it. We figured it was going to be around $85,000 to $90,000. The guy that just bid on the shades was around $35,000 to $40,000, which was anticipated. The only contractor that bid $450,000, and we had an ad alternate for painting, and he bid $55,000 to paint the hallways. So we're going to ask the board not to accept that bid, or we're just going to let it sunset. And we're trying to figure out another way to approach the project to get it on the streets and do the work. The building condition survey board walkthrough is going to start. As always, Ms. Shear is heading the charge on that. We'll be starting here soon. We'll be going through all the buildings, taking pictures, talking to the principals, and seeing what needs to be done out there. The capital project rebid is on schedule to go. The date is escaping me, but it's early in November. I think November 3rd it's going on the streets, and we're going to be taking bids later that month. And the tennis courts, we were on the schedule for the end of August, and we missed our date, and we were put off. And I talked to the guy today, and he said probably in about 2 weeks they're going to resurface them, and we'll be further along on that. like I said, it was very brief. Other places in the district, what we've been doing, we've done a lot of work here at Mahar, but we've moved over to the other schools, and we're doing some outside work on the playgrounds. We're putting wood chips everywhere. We placed 2 benches over at Bailey this week that were a joint effort between Miss Aaron, I think, what's her, I can't think of her last name, the new principal at Meyer, and the PTL, Miss Nelson, and she wanted to have them done before she left, and we're accommodating that. And we've had quite a few water leaks at the beginning of this year, more than normal. I don't know why, and we've been working on that pretty much since school started. And that's what the happenings are.
Any questions? I have a question. Is the renovation or restoration of the facade at Main, is that complete?
The front of the building is complete, and I know that the field house side is. The side facing Tobin, because there's a lot of the dumpsters and the staging areas over there, they did part of it, but they didn't do it all. And they're now in the alleyways behind the building doing the brick restoration back there. I would gather, I would think that would probably be done in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And for 2 reasons. I mean, the weather's going to get to a place where they're not going to be able to do it.
And actually, it's not complete because we'll have the handrail that goes up the middle of the stairs and the 2 light posts we'll put out on the side of the stairs. That'll be kind of our last part of.
Right. But the stonework, all I'm talking about is the stonework.
Right, that's
The
what
rest
I
of the
was
renovation outside has not
talking
been done, no.
It does look beautiful.
Yeah, it really cleaned up nice.
Mr. Michael?
Mr. Clever, you said November 3rd we start the new bidding for capital projects.
Yeah.
Did we make any changes as far as
So what
the
we
overall
did.
look of the work?
Yeah, so all the work that was included in Miller and JFK is included in this project. And when we did the budget, we were close, and we wanted to make sure that we did something at Edson. And so what we did is, one of the easier parts to break away was the boiler room, because it was on its own pages and it had its own specs. So what we're doing the boiler room as is a add alternate to the contract. So if the alternate is, the number is right, then we'll do that. And then because we were right at the 16 million mark, we decided also to do the parking lot at Gruner Field as an add alternate. So there are the 2 changes. But all the windows, the auditorium, the electrical upgrades, all the things that we had talked about, and KSQ and BBL in those 2 schools are being done. The elevator at JFK, I'm just trying to, off the top of my head, pick up remember all the things, but all of the things are being done.
Any other questions?
You talked about a couple of different things that are going on at the high school. Talk to me about what's our noise level?
Interesting enough, we haven't had any complaints this year. Compared to the other, we had a lot of rock removal, and it was bad. This year it's very quiet. The only noise we have is usually when we have a couple of man lifts for the folks that are doing the brick renovation, and there's another lift that brings the garbage out from the 2nd floor when the reverse bracers come on. But they've been out in front of the school, so it hasn't been that bad. In the courtyard, that reverse boiler reverberates quite nicely. But that's the only noise. We've had no complaints at all yet that I know of from the teachers or the students about the noise.
And I know this is not a priority, but we still have some punch list items in this building.
Correct.
That I think our contractors are required to come back and fix.
Right.
Do we have any indication of if or when they're going to do that?
Well, I will tell you that tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, Train is going to be here, because I've been on the phone with them even about the air conditioning in this room 2 or 3 times today. It seems like the system isn't balanced properly, and it kind of wants to move temperature more than it should. So that we have Train coming back tomorrow to work on that. And as far as Aris contracting and the thresholds, I believe that's scheduled for next Wednesday when people are out. The other items we're working on with the different contractors. We haven't completed the roof yet because the skylights had about an 8 or 10 week lead time. And then there was an issue with the elevation of the skylight, and they're working through that. So as far as the roof is watertight, but the skylights are not installed, and as soon as they come in, they'll install.
What will that mean for the people who work here?
Nothing. They'll safe it off, and when they're putting over the reading pit, when they're putting that skylight up, they'll safe off the reading pit, and they'll install it, and then they'll take down the barrier. And the
So
same,
no interruption to our pre-K.
no interruption to the pre-K.
Oh, so would you like to talk about the enrollment?
Thank you, Mr. Clegg.
Yes, he's done.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So I did include in your library our latest enrollment. I think it was as of 10:59 this morning. As you know, as you see when you look through it, again, we can have, I mean, I can continue to update you as we move forward through the months on that, because we do keep it, you know, like I said, I've been checking it every day. One of the reasons I put it in your library so late is because I wanted you to have as close to real time, because it is changing every day. Our overall enrollment, we're up about 104 students, I believe, total, from last year at this time in the same, within the EduView program. So our class sizes have, you're going to see the one thing that's going to jump out at you is the kindergarten at Crosby. There's 2 sections at 26. We know our goal is 21 to 22 at K1 and 2. We have posted for a new kindergarten teacher. We'll be hiring a new kindergarten teacher at Crosby, and breaking up those sections so that those 26s are going to come down. We're just, I think Dr. Felicello will be interviewing next week, and we'll get this. It's probably going to be November, maybe close to November before we get that, but it is October 2nd. So, usually we get someone who's working somewhere else, and maybe they have to give notice, those kind of things. But we'll be opening a new kindergarten section at Crosby to alleviate that 26. You'll also see over at Edson, we do have two 23s at, I think, first grade. Again, we want to be at 22, but 23, we're not going to open another section and hire another teacher to bring this down to 23. And you also see one of those classes at 21, so it really could be 2 22s and a 23. But again, we like to give our building principals some leeway in how they fill their classes, and I'm sure Mr. Martin has a reason that those 23s are 23s and that 21 is a 21. Maybe it's an L situation in that classroom, maybe it's a special education inclusion situation in the classroom that he thinks those are the ideal class sizes. But other than that, we're in pretty good shape. We have, again, we're up overall, and we're just trying to do our best that K1, 2 stay at 22. Dr. Scott?
So at Graves, we have 2 kindergartens with 23.
Yes.
And a 21. So I'm assuming that Dr. Priest is working with that. And is he able to take extra TA support? That I know he has that each school has a floating TA?
Right.
And able to allocate it into those 2 classes?
Correct. And that's what we've encouraged our principals when they have areas. Every building, some have 2, have teachers assistants at large. So that's just at the discretion of the principal to move them to where they think they're needed. And it may be a different place, different times of the year. It may be with a new teacher at the beginning of the year, it may be with a larger kindergarten class, or maybe somewhere else in the building where they think it's necessary. But yes, Dr. Parise and anyone, whether it be kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, or 6th grade, not 6th, 4th grade, that if they think that's the right place for their TA at large, and we've encouraged, again.
How many does Graves have? 1?
Graves has 1 TA at large, yeah.
Because their 4th grade also has 2 26s, I see, but it's interesting because their 1st, 2nd, and 3rd are pretty low.
Yeah, there's some weird dynamics in
Right.
all of that that we've looked at. So it's a strange. We're seeing, when we look at the 104, we think a lot about our L population, new students coming in, but we're seeing our kindergarten enrollment is up. I mean, our kindergarten enrollment is really where we're seeing the increases.
Well, I'm glad that we're looking at ways to alleviate that 26 at Crosby. I mean, that is,
Yeah.
you've got to draw the line somewhere. 26 really low ones.
Yeah, we want to be at 22. When we get a 23,
Right.
to take a 23 and create a new section at 23, it's is difficult. And it's not necessarily the best plan for us. That's TAs at large are a good opportunity there. Or they have an opportunity to use those there, but 26 is it's well beyond where we want to go.
Okay.
This is not the elementary, but there's 300 more students at Bailey than there are at Miller.
Correct.
Is there any way of balancing that?
We could.
It's been that way for a while.
It's been that way since we moved 5th grade. Since we consolidated, since we closed the schools and consolidated schools and moved 5th grade there. Bailey does have the building does have a larger capacity. I mean, you wouldn't think so. You'd think Millen was a bigger school, but it's actually not. Bailey actually has a larger student capacity. I think we talked about this, and nobody likes to talk about it. Definitely, the superintendent doesn't like to talk about it very often. But redistricting is something that I think is something we need to start talking about, especially when we start looking at our budgeting and using our resources and equitably doing so. We need to look at our attendance zones as well. We've been doing a little bit over the last year or so, nothing official, nothing out there for the board to make decisions on, but I think that's part of that for sure. And and both buildings, when those buildings were built, when you look at the capacities at the middle schools, a lot of those things were before a lot of the way we deliver education now. It was before we had so many 12-1-1s. That was before we had so many rooms that need to be breakouts for different services. So what used to be a lot of classrooms, there aren't as many. But we continue to see growth. We're going to have a discussion about our attendance zones and maybe about what the capacities need to be and where we could add on.
I'm sorry.
I'm glad to see that we have 503 seniors. I hope we have 503 at the end that graduate. Is that high? Because it's lower 400.
That's a high number.
Yeah.
That's a high number. And, I'm not going to say this definitively, but in general, our experience has been when they get there, they make it.
Good, good.
That tends to be the case.
I hope so.
So, yeah, so
Your lips to God's ears.
something like that.
Is there a census that is going to be done to just see what the trend is for kids coming into school, the numbers? Because we went through a downward trend for a while, and I just wonder if the population is changing.
Yeah, we do project enrollment. We do our enrollment projections, and we get them, and we actually have a service that does it for us. I have to say, up to this point, they haven't been that accurate. I don't think anyone predicted that we would be up 104 students at this point. But we continue to do that, but we do look at our live births, how many children were born, and what's the housing capacity, what was the expansion around housing in the community. And those are all factors that are put into place when we look at that enrollment projection. So, we have research that tells us what possibly could be coming. Again, we can't guarantee all those students who were born this year, 5 years from now, or 4 years from now are going to come into our programs. They may move, they may whatever, go to different schools, whatever. But yeah, we have some pretty decent ideas about that. But right now, a lot of our enrollment isn't based on people who are born here.
Right.
So
They're moving in.
It's an inexact science, to say the least.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Shaughnessy would agree with that.
Yes. So if I can make a couple comments. This is the first year that we've had a significant increase since 2002. From 2002 until about 2016, there was a decline every year between 100 and 150 students. The last 3 years, there's been changes of, in 1 year it was 1 student, and I think last year there were 25 students more, and this year 104. So I think we're definitely beyond that long-term decline that we were experienced for a large number of years. And so last year we had a board meeting on October 10th, I think it was, and we got an enrollment run that was dated October 4th. I think the gun was I don't remember. I could have two of these numbers wrong. It was either 6223 or 6226. And the BEDS report that came out that we got in July, the enrollment was only 3 students different. So I was really amazed at that. And today is BEDS Day, actually.
Mhm.
So the BEDS report that we get some number of months
Later.
won't be years, I hope, but it always gets later every year. It should be around this number. And just a story I have, a couple weeks ago, I was at a neighbor's home. There was a meeting with our local alderman about housing, and a woman who had just moved into our neighborhood was there. She has a young daughter, son, I think a daughter. She said that she was, they had lived previously in Seattle, and they had done a nationwide search for where they wanted to relocate to, and they selected Kingston, and moved into the GW district. So.
I hope they have jobs. There's no jobs here.
Well, I don't know, maybe they're, whatever, for whatever reason they're here. They're attracted by GW.
Must be
Uh,
boutique hotel or something.
Okay.
That concludes the superintendent's report. Oh, I do have, sorry, Camille will not let me not talk about this. One of the things that we don't have to discuss today, but we really need to put it on the table and have it be a conversation over the next, I'll say, month and have a decision around that is, as you all know, last year we had some issues with the voting machines. We ended up changing our voting hours and changing our voting locations. I don't foresee us having the same problem this year. I can't guarantee it yet. I'll know that soon. But I think the conversation that we would like, that Camille and I would like to, the board to engage in is, if we, given that if there were no voting machine issues, what would our preference be as far as our voting locations? Do we want to go back to how we were, the elementary schools and those hours? Do we want to do something in between? We obviously don't want to do it the way we did it last year, unless there's an absolute necessity, which we don't think there will be. So I think that's a conversation to start, or at least start thinking about it, and we could have that conversation more in depth at the next meeting. I think that would help us make some decisions that we have to make in central office.
Well, I do have a question. Next year, since it's federal election year, we'll have more primaries, and the voting machines that are in the county will be utilized more. So I think we need to think about that as well.
Yeah, again, I'm going to engage the Board of Elections and to find out where are we here and what do we need to do. But I think we need to take whatever actions necessary to get back to some level of normalcy around our election. Last year was not what we wanted to be, and it's not how we want to do things going forward.
Yeah, I agree with that, because we want more participation in elections, not less. And I still am frustrated that we are assigned the same level of kind of specificity as national and state elections when we are doing so much less. We're electing trustees, we're doing a budget, and I still think that has to have some change from the state ed department. It's just a huge burden on school districts. When we could do it in-house, have everybody, vote at their elementary school and come up with the results, and it's just a burden that we shouldn't have to bear. I think with the state of technology today, there's no excuse for us having to use board of elections machines. So I still think we shouldn't give up on that front either.
Mr. Spicer could bring it up on the floor at the NISBA convention.
That list seems to be getting longer by the minute.
Well, I just think that we have to pressure the regents and the Board of Ed or the state ed department to look at this again, because it is a problem throughout the state. It's not just a problem in Kingston.
Well, I think when I said go back to how it was, I saw a lot of nods around the table. If we don't have to discuss this any further, if that's how the board feels, that we want to go back to our former hours and locations, we'll just move forward with that.
Yeah, but will we have the machines?
Well, that's our preference. If that's our preference, I need to be able to communicate that, and Camille needs to be able to do some planning on her part as well. So.
I think that's my preference, because
I would like to go back to the same locations, but I don't think that we need to start at 6 o'clock in the morning. I
Well,
would
we
prefer
started
to-
at 7.
Well, even
Yeah.
7. I would prefer to see perhaps noon to 9.
But I think there were a lot of complaints that people do it before work.
Or 7 to 8, maybe not have it open till 9, because that last hour, we really don't get that
So,
many.
but the
Right.
more before work hours, I think, are important.
And parent drop-off hours, if they're voting at that school, it does help it, so I think the morning isn't, we can recommend cutting morning hours, I think
Yeah, 8
the
o'clock.
end of the
at 9 o'clock, at 8 to 9, we're not getting very
Nobody
many
comes.
voters, if any. So that's something to think about. But I think the locations help us, just knowing the locations help us as far as.
As long as we have the machines, then I think that's a great idea to go back to the elementary schools.
I would prefer keeping the same amount of hours and going, as a person who did not work in this community, 6 o'clock to 8 would be, because people leave that commute early and don't get back. I know people that commute to the city and don't get back, they don't go home.
We're never gonna be able to get people to work from 6 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. It's
No,
just
I wouldn't go to
impossible.
9, I would shorten the night. I would,
But we don't even get that many voters at 7 in the morning, so I don't think that it would pay. No, because Board of Elections was telling me, you have too many hours. You don't have that many voters that you need to be open at 7, 8 AM. And we argued, we need for the before going to work, we need that. But I really don't think 6 AM would get that many voters out.
So it'd be more feasible, maybe like 8 to 8? Is that
No,
what-
I
I
think
think
7
7
to
to 8 would be
7 to
good.
8?
I do,
13 hours?
yeah.
I would hate to see us go back to the locations and not be able to get the machines next year. And I hate to
We
keep
can't
harping on
change
that.
it
but-
every
I
year.
think,
We cannot.
as I said, and this is a bigger discussion than this, and I have to have more information to bring to you, but I think we need to do whatever we need to do to go back to having the machines, go back to having those locations. And if it comes down to looking at buying them again, then I think that's an investment we need to consider.
That's why we have to
I
work
don't
on
know
this.
if this is true or not, but someone had told me recently that there would be new voting machines. Federal government is saying that, and in that case, they may be selling their old voting machines. So I don't, that's another thing we need to check with them.
And just like the ones that they replaced, the problem with those was you can't buy the materials to use the machines because they stopped making them. So I still think I think we have a year, we should pressure the state ed at the same time. The question I would have though, if we go back to all of the elementary schools, do we need 2 machines in every school?
No, and I don't believe that we had 2 machines
We
at every
didn't?
school,
Yeah.
no.
So
We
only,
did,
I
we had
think
one spare in case
see.
something went
Okay.
wrong with, one, but no. they-
Yeah, good, because I think 1 is
Yeah.
sufficient. Thank you.
Okay.
I think we have different leverage this year. I mean, I think the legislature passed a law giving school districts the option to refuse a Board of Election decision about having elections in their buildings. I don't think it's gone to the governor yet, but if it goes to the governor and he passes it, we'll have more leverage against the Board of Elections. Because I think that
It's a sticky.
their reasoning last year was a little bit, fortunately, I think when they changed the date of the primary in June, I think the Board of Elections got lucky, because I had heard before that they weren't going to give us the election.
And if our budget ever went down, we would not have the machines to use in June at all. I mean, I would hate for that to ever happen, but it's always a possibility.
Well, I think that, again, there's a conversation to be had with the Board of Elections and other people at the county. Not necessarily thinking about leverage, thinking about collaboration. We'll see what we can do to work together to make it happen.
why are we the only county that has the issue?
We're actually
We're
not.
No, we're
Because
not.
Orange County gave, like Marlboro and
Yeah,
some
we're-
of the southern districts machines because they had extra.
On this side of the
Like they
state,
were
it
lending
seems
them
like we're the
to
only
other
county,
towns.
but when you get into
Yeah.
central and western New York, many counties don't supply the voting machines to the school districts. So it's new to us, it's foreign and new to us, but it's not, it's not a universal thing where the counties give the machines to the school districts. So we're, but again, I'm gonna remain optimistic and we'll move forward and do what we have to do.
And as James said, if the legislation goes our way, we'll have more leverage anyway.
More cooperation, perhaps.
Okay. So that concludes the superintendent's report.
So the next item on the agenda is the Board of Education.
Policy.
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 The policy committee met on September 20th, Friday, and we had a full complement of people there. Mr. Verge is the workhorse for the policy committee. And so I have to thank him because everything that we assigned to him, he got done. And I appreciate that. We have 3 policies for first readings that are in your library and also listed on the agenda. Admission of non-resident students. And what has happened there is that the NISBA had language recommended, and it was integrated into our existing 5150 policy. So those changes were also reviewed by our attorney, and they had a few additional changes, which Mr. Verge nicely incorporated as well. So that was passed unanimously to be recommended to the board for the first reading. The voter registration for students, we had a lot of discussion around that. We're confused, so we have asked that it be clarified in terms of pre-registration for students and registration for students who are 18. So the high school has a long-standing tradition of registering students who are 18 to try to, get as many people involved in the elective process as possible. But now there's a push for pre-registration of 16-year-olds. And it's not clear if the language wasn't clear in terms of what group they were targeting with this new form. And so we're going to reconsider that at the next meeting. The child abuse in an educational setting. Again, Mr. Verge looked at this policy alongside our current policy, 5470, and to ensure that we capture everything and everyone who is now mandated. There were reporters that were added to that list of mandated reporters. So the language has been incorporated into our policy, 5470. It was reviewed by our attorney and again is being recommended to the full board for consideration. The other policy we spent a lot of time talking about was student health services and opioid overdose, since there has been so much attention to that lately. But again, Mr. Verge checked with Dr. Woodley and our lead nurses to make sure that it reflected the student immunizations changes by state law, which were done in last June. So because of those legal changes, we do have some students who are forced to be kept out of school now because the 2-week period of them being immunized had passed. So I don't know if those numbers have changed since our policy meeting.
Actually, those numbers have changed pretty significantly. At the time of the last board meeting, we had 101 students, and I think at the policy committee, maybe it's still been the same, 101 students who have been excluded. That number is actually down to 25, and actually the real number is 8, because we know that 17 of those 25 parents have decided to homeschool. So we have 8 students that right now we're still doing cross-referencing between our homeschooling requests and the students who are not here due to immunization. So those 8 may also be covered on them. We just haven't gotten to the bottom of that yet. So I do want to thank Mr. Silverstein and our lead nurses and Mr. Verge for just digging in on this again. I mean, for a district of, almost 7,000 students, for us to really have 8 students who we don't really have or aren't accounted for as far as the immunization is really quite a feat.
And I think it's important for people to understand that even if they choose not to immunize their child, they're not automatically homeschooling unless they register with the district as being homeschooled. So that's really important for the community to understand. And again, Mr. Verge did credit the lead nurses for their great work in the past in terms of this policy, and I wanted to say that as well. So what has happened is that the policy 8121 and our policy are going to be dovetailed together again due to Mr. Verge's efforts. He really is good at this. So, and I appreciate that. So what we are going to do is that there will be, Mr. Silverstein, as stated, is overseeing the effort for all the information being dispersed to all the school nurses and other staff affected. There was one correction, which I think was made in terms of the policy you are reading. And what will happen is that 5420, Student Health Services, will incorporate the policy 8121.1, opioid overdose, and that is being recommended to you. We just felt that it was better to have both policies together, overall, health services, and not have the opioid policy separate, because it really is, it catches everything. So there's a lot of very interesting reading. Read it carefully. And if you have any questions, let me know. And we will probably, I don't think we're going to meet this Friday because we don't have that much business to attend to. So our next policy meeting will be in November. Because people are busy, especially Mr.
Yeah, he's got to catch up on everything else I do because he's doing policy always.
With the child abuse in an educational setting, the school Board of Education members are mandated reporters, and I believe there's a video training that we have to watch. Is that right?
Yes.
And the district has that set up, and they know whether or not we take it. So, as well as all the other employees of the district who are mandated reporters.
You'll receive an email.
Is there a certain time it's due, or?
I'm not sure.
So it'll just have the link
Yeah,
to the
do it this year.
Yeah, I don't think it's very long. What did you say, 45 minutes or something?
Yeah, it's not long.
It's not long.
That's long.
Get your popcorn before you start.
Okay. Any other questions about policy committee? Audit and finance?
Yes,
James?
I got a few things to report.
Michael?
The Audit and Finance Committee met last Tuesday, September 24th. And first, the committee accepted the treasurer's and claims reports and the fund reports from the business office, which are both under resolutions. I'd like to move them both to have the board approve those resolutions.
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained?
Taking right over here.
Approved 9-0.
Also, the committee invited Mr. Corelli, our lunch program director, to give us a report about our middle school's introduction to the community eligibility program. And he reported that was such a success. We got plenty of students enrolled into the program, and they increased our federal aid, in the food. Also, what was nice about it that we had no increase on the price of the lunch program. And I have to commend, Mr. Corelli, that We are one of the few districts in the state that we are in the black for the last 70 years. So that was very encouraging. In the old business, we're going to discuss about internal audit, the topics for internal audit for this year. And I was in favor to have the transportation department audited. It's almost $7.5 million a year budget, so that would be nice to take a look at that. And finally, we had a short discussion about the warehouse on Old Bunny Avenue, which I would like to have some discussion as new business, Mr. President.
You want to discuss it now?
Well, it's fine with me, yeah. As I said, from day one, we were talking about fixing up Mahar School. In the plans was also to move the warehouse right here, but the architects felt that it wasn't feasible, it was not enough space, the building or the parking lot, and that plan was scrapped. So I feel very comfortable, leasing the warehouse on Old Bunny Avenue, being more fiscally responsible myself, and as all of you have made the promise to be fiscally responsible. Every dollar we collect from the taxpayers, we spend it wise on the education of the students, but also taking care of our buildings. So it amazed me that the last 10 years lease, we have spent over $1.2 million for, the rental. And also, on top of the lease agreement, we got hit 3 years ago with $125,000 fixing the roof of the building, which to me, it was astonishing, being part of the AAA agreement. And we just entered another 5-year agreement, which because that's $675,000, I believe, or more. So we should take a look about making a long-term investment, buying an existing building or build a warehouse in one of our existing schools. So that's something that we should consider before, this will be up. So I would like to take some action as far as this is concerned. So that's all I'd like to bring up to your attention.
When is the lease that we're currently using?
We have 4 more years.
We
on
have
it.
4 more years.
It's been a 5-year renewal for the last 15 years.
I know that storage throughout the district is at a premium, so I think it would be wise to look into what space might be available into the community and look down the road into that. I think it
And
would be
I know that
worthwhile.
Mr. Olson and Mr. Claver as well have over the years been out and looked at a few different things. I think that there's an opportunity for us to take a look. I mean, buying something is not like, not buying a house or buying property is never easy, but it's even harder for us. I mean, it's a voter referendum. I mean, so we have to identify the property we want to be able to, really secure that, and then go to the voters and get an okay to spend the money to do so. But I think that it's worth looking at what the inventory of buildings that are out there right now look like, and then looking at what would empty land near our schools or somewhere else would be, and the possibility of building. I think that's something we could, if you give us a couple of months, we can come back with some proposals around that.
And I know that Mr. Olson and Mr. Glover have spent some time out. I remember every time that this lease comes up, it's a conversation about that. What the options are, what the least expensive is. So these are conversations that we have had. I mean, it always helps to have them again, and it helps to go out now that, real estate is changing, and so we can go out and do another scan and certainly look for that land. But these are conversations, every time that lease is approaching its end, we do have those conversations.
We haven't had an increase in the base rent of that building since we signed the first lease. It remains at $4 a square foot. So that's a rental that's been in place for 15 years or more.
Yes, but my fear is the AAA lease that we pay for every improvements we have to make on the building. Like I said 3 years ago, we got killed $125,000 to fix the roof. I'm afraid during the term of this lease, gonna come back and do the blacktop, which, you know how expensive it is, blacktop in an area. So that's, I'm looking at for the long-term benefit for our district and our taxpayers. I'm sure the community, they are favored to find a building or find a lot, or we can build, something of our own.
But we'd still have those expenses of roofs and blacktop.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
even
today,
if we own
Mr.
them.
Clubber can tell you how much it costs for the blacktop. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm afraid is gonna happen soon. Then when they come and give you the bill, Mr. Rosa has to sign the check. He's not happy signing checks.
Well, it's definitely worth looking into. It's definitely worth opening it up and seeing what's out there.
And I think Mr. Olson wants to add to the conversation.
Yes.
I just want to say one thing with regard to $4 that Mr. Shaughnessy just cited. I talked to a reputable commercial real estate person who we do not do business with this week, who told me that that warehouse space right now of the type that we have on a triple net basis ranges from $5 to $7 a foot. So the $4 that we have is at least at the low end of that range.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
I think that if we buy a standalone facility or build a standalone facility, I don't think we're eligible for state aid on it. Is that correct?
No, not for a warehouse.
So that's another thing that has to be taken into consideration. And we have 25,000 square feet at 918. And parking. I think there's 4 acres there. I mean, we don't use all of the parking because there's medical facilities in the front part of it now. But if we were to build a 25,000 square foot warehouse, and construction costs were, what would be a reasonable estimate?
300,
So $7.5 million. That's a big bond amount. Right? That's a big payment.
Maybe we need a longer lease for $4 a square foot.
Well, we can only do it 5 years at a time without voter approval.
But I think Mr. Olson and I could come back to the board, again, give us a month or so with some different scenarios for everyone to kind of look at and consider, including staying where we are and maybe a comparison, this as opposed to staying where we are. So we make some, again, as Mr. Meckler said, some fiscally responsible decisions in which we're making the right decision.
So that's all I have to report.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Monkey.
And the next meeting will be October 22nd.
Next we've come to the consent agenda. Are there any resolutions that any board member would like to have pulled from the consent agenda? Hearing none, can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Lots of seconds, lots of firsts. Are there any questions about any of the items on the consent agenda that don't get into a long discussion about it? Okay. No questions, we'll call the question. All in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously adopted.
We have 2 donations. Okay. We gratefully accept the donation of $100 from the William Donner Collection to J. Watson Bailey Middle School for audiobooks for the library, and we gratefully accept from Connect Kids Field Trip Grant, $295 for the Meyer Elementary School.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lim.
Somehow I've lost my agenda here on this screen.
Old business.
Old business. Okay, there's a couple items of old business that I have. Somewhere. One of them is that we have, for the NISBA convention, we've reserved one of the district cars, Shelley and Powell, to drive there. I submitted my driver's license, but there wasn't a big, is there anyone interested in driving on a district car? So anyway, my intention now.
Herb might be.
So two board members at BOCES have reserved a BOCES car, and I'll go with them. I won't have to drive.
Well, some of us are going in Wednesday, right?
Right.
So,
I mean, you can take the car and drive back.
Yeah.
I'm driving.
You're driving.
Taking a few people if they make it with me, you know.
Okay. Stay on her good side for the next 3 weeks.
you have a valid license?
I don't have a license.
No,
Do you
just
need a
to make
license?
sure.
Okay, that takes care of that. We have coffee and conversation coming up on, one is on Saturday, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And from 10 to 2?
9 to 2.
9 to 2. I think I volunteered for one segment. Did Mr. Spicer volunteer for one segment?
I believe I did, but I know I'm gonna have to bow out.
Oh, that's not right. You can't do that.
You can't do that.
I volunteered for one, but I've got to do early because I have a memorial service that day.
Okay. Any other volunteers? I'll do it later, I'll do it later time.
How long do we,
Well, it's 5 hours, so we do 2.5 hours each.
I have to be in Woodstock at 11?
Okay, so 1.5 hours. You mean. I could be there at 10:30. Is that okay with you?
That'll work.
Okay. If anyone else would like to stop by? you're more than welcome.
I could do
Where's
early,
the
but I
lit?
can't
Where-
do-
It's at the farmer's market, right?
Farmers
Yes.
market.
Oh.
So if
Do
I
we have a
can,
list
then
online?
James,
What is-
I'll-
Do we have a schedule online of the?
No, there's no schedule yet.
So what day is that? On a Saturday?
This Saturday, this coming Saturday at the farmers market on Wall Street.
And where are we?
Right across from the coffee place in front of the courthouse, kind of.
Well, I don't know.
Well,
Well, that's where we were
That's
last
where-
year,
Yeah, I don't
before we
know
were
if
across
it's
the
the
street,
same
but
place.
somewhere
I
there.
don't know the.
In between John and Main Street, that block.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have a banner that
If you bring it, you
And
do.
We
Friday
have to
morning.
bring it, and the table,
make
and the
sure.
Friday
chairs.
morning it'll be ready for pickup, that and some material.
Just
Is that in our office or is that in Kristen and Karen?
Kristen and Karen.
Done it for 3 years now.
We'll make sure you have that.
Okay, so, and then we have a coffee conversation scheduled, I think you said January 14th at
Mhm.
Boys and Girls Club. And Reverend Childs is, did you say you were scheduling something, you were looking into a schedule?
I was waiting for them to get back with me. I have the new Progressive was supposed to be, they were looking at something in November, I believe.
Okay.
And the Vila, also, I don't know what the church, but the Hispanic church. He was supposed to get back with me, so I'll call him again.
Okay.
That's the Boys and Girls Club on the 14th at what time?
6 p.m.
Yeah. I'd like to volunteer for that one. Are you taking volunteers now?
You can.
Yeah.
Wait, when is that?
I'll do that
The
one.
14th,
I don't know what I'm doing.
January
January
14th, right?
14th of October?
Right now I'm free.
That's
I'll do
that's-
that.
It's January 14th, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
January.
January
I
14th.
can do
not-
that also.
That's,
It's next year.
that's a long, it's next
Yeah,
year.
it's, a long, you know, it's months away, but
So get,
you can change your mind later on.
Except Spicer.
6 p.m.
And then there was one more you mentioned to me.
The potluck at Kingston High School.
Yeah,
Potluck.
that's
Yeah,
October.
October 10th.
That's soon, though.
October 10th.
Next
October
week.
10th, that's from 4 to 7. And that leads right into the Ulster County School Board Association meeting that is also on
That day.
October 10th.
Same time?
Well, it starts at
So
6
six,
for
but-
dinner there, but the meeting starts at 6:30. And the agenda there is that every school district that is participating will have a segment of time to make a presentation on, I like the term that they use at PTEC, when they have student presentations at the end of the year, and they talk about, they have to talk about their GLOWs, which are the accomplishments that they have had in the last year, and the GROW, which is what they want to concentrate on and accomplish in the next year. I attended a couple of them last June, and I was really impressed with them. I think it's really excellent for students to have that opportunity to, they make presentations, and it's interesting. But anyway, so we have, so I'm going, Mr. Michael is going, and Mrs. Jordan is going, and Dr. Jacobowitz will be there as recording secretary, if she would like to participate with us. She could.
No, it's not okay.
but I like Dr. Catalino came up with some good points that we.
Yeah, so I-
Lows and growth, I thought they were great.
Yeah, so I wanted to actually, I thought I had printed them out when I was going to meet. So I sent an email out a couple of weeks ago asking for any suggestions. And I sent out another email this afternoon. And where is it? Within a half an hour, I think, of when I sent my email out, Dr. Patalino came back with an email that I'd like to read. Mr. Shaughnessy, my 2 cents on 2018-19. Number one, the opening of the Mahar district-funded pre-K that focuses on serving our FRPL and ELL population is a great accomplishment. We serve 72 4-year-old students implementing a dual language approach. There are 9 languages spoken among the students, and a full wraparound program is available. Currently done with in-house people, but starting in a couple weeks, it will be operated by the YWCA. The wraparound program is DSS supplemented and offered on a sliding scale based on income. And DSS is Department of Social Services, I believe. In January, we hope to be able to add 36 more 4-year-olds. In addition, and somewhat related, to this we sold our former district office well above the asking price, and it will now go on the local tax rolls and add to the economic growth of the community. Furthermore, the move to Mahar fulfilled our promise to the community that we would repurpose the schools we closed in 2013. The second glow is the overall focus of student social emotional health has been a great
Accomplishment as well.
touch your screen on it.
I got my computer.
Does anyone else? Oh,
I have it, you want it?
Here, Jim.
Okay. Okay, the overall focus on student social emotional health has been a great accomplishment as well. We successfully implemented the required mental health curriculum well ahead of the mandate, engaged with multiple community-based organizations, Wild Earth, CCE, New York Defenders Association, Family of Woodstock, NYU, the Center for Trauma Resilient Communities, Peaceful Guardians, the Empathy Institute, to name a few, to implement social emotional wellness, restorative practices, schools of belonging, and cultural sensitive schools throughout our district. Number 3, graduation rate, of course, specifically the improvement in our subgroups and the shrinking achievement graduation gap, and continuing to fund our AP and college level classes, allowing many students to graduate with up to 2 years of college credits. Honorable mention, KHS renovation, KHS internship program, Chambers special education inclusion and ELL classes, and Beach Stadium. Goals for 2019-2020 suggestions: fully implement restorative practices at Miller and Bailey. Number 2, create a budget and educational program that explicitly shows the equitable distribution of resource to our schools above and beyond the state mandated formula. Hope that helps. Dr. Paul J. Catalino, Superintendent of the Schools, Kingston City School District. I replied back to him, I thought that was at least worth $1, so there's 98 cents floating around or something.
That was not written in a way to be read.
I hope you don't mind. It was really excellent, and I just wanted the community to have the opportunity to hear what you wrote. And obviously, those are things that you are proud of, and I think we are all proud of them as well. And it's really accomplishments that I think we will be proud to present to the component districts of Ulster County BOCES.
You'll take up the whole meeting.
You know, and I really, and I appreciate that you took time to respond this way. I mean, if anyone else has anything they would like to add, I think that these are three things that we would, certainly Mahar and the pre-K program, were on our radar. And I think the restorative practices at Miller and Bailey, I think those are really topical and important. And we adopted a student code of conduct, I believe it was in January of 2017, 2016, that included restorative practices. And it always takes a long time to get things moving in any large organization. And the Kingston City School District is one of the largest organizations in the county. So,
Yeah, I would like to add something about the PTA program that's been very successful since the onset, like 5 years ago. We started out with 13 students, and this year we have like 75,
right,
which is a great accomplishment, and that will increase our graduation rate also. So
yeah.
I'm very glad about this program.
We're starting our 6th year.
This is 6th year, right?
This is the 6th year. And I asked Dr. Corey at the last BOCES board meeting, which was a week ago, what the expected completion rate of those that first cohort was going to be, and he doesn't have that. He said he would get me that number. But it's a, you know, you have to remember that these 8th graders, when they were selected, they were considered somewhat at risk of not graduating. And I think the graduation rate is going to be at least 90%. I don't think there's that many students, maybe 1 or 2 students that have dropped out, and some of them, at least one of them has dropped out because he completed his associate's degree and has moved on to, I'm not sure where he's moved on to, but he's been successful. So we'll work out something on this, and can we have some assistance maybe from the publicity, the communications department to help make a presentation?
Yes, got it.
May as well show off all our capabilities. Okay. And then I have one more item of old business, which is the Kingston Common Council approved the intermunicipal agreement last night, a vote of 7-0 with 2 abstentions. Two school district employees abstained. Tony Davis and Michael
Patrick
O'Reilly. And I had intended to go and just make a brief remark, but I hope that they passed it. But about 6:30 last evening, someone called me and said that the video of the Common Council caucus from Monday evening was online, and that they discussed it. And so I looked at that, and it was about a 25-minute discussion, and there were a lot of questions about it, and a couple people were hesitant about it, and they weren't very conversant with the terms of the agreement. So my comments, I essentially made the same comments last night that I had made at our last board meeting when it was brought up here. That we're giving up managerial and capital control, which if we're not giving up our ownership share. If we had given up our ownership share, we wouldn't have had any managerial or capital control anyway, so that's not a big give. And we're also benefiting the city of Kingston taxpayers because we'll be sharing the capital costs 50-50 with the city, and more than 60% of our tax revenue comes from outside of the city of Kingston. So we are relieving the city of Kingston taxpayers of that portion of any capital costs. And I think that's very fair. It's what we've been doing since 1989 when we entered into the agreement originally. And our students come from all over the district, different municipalities. So I think it's only fair that we share the capital costs in that way. And it's renewable. It's a 5-year agreement, automatically renewable, but of course we can renegotiate after 4 years. And I think it's going to be very successful. And we also have two seats on the Parks and Recreation Commission, which we'll have to discuss. Dr. Paolino, the superintendent of schools, will have one ex officio. So Dr. Paolino can either serve on it or appoint a designee. And I guess the school board could nominate another member to take that seat. So I think it's a win-win for everybody. And I'm looking forward to the attorneys are comparing what we passed and what they passed, making sure it's identical, and we'll be signing the agreement in coming days. So, I was very pleased with it. Any other old business? Any new business? Next, a second opportunity for public comment.
Board member announcements.
Board member announcements, okay.
I was just to say, it's a little hard to hear.
What's your hearing, Maury?
Gotta work it better, Billy.
Mrs. Powers, you can take the microphone.
No, she's having a hard time hearing.
She said it was hard for
I feel
them
like
to
it's a
hear
little
us.
hard to hear.
Okay, yeah, okay, I didn't realize that. I thought that we had.
It's the learning curve, guys.
Okay.
You gotta really have it up close to you when you're speaking.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
we'll do a little more testing of this over the next week or so.
Okay.
Last week it was too loud.
Yeah.
No, it's not loud enough, so.
I told Dr. Catalino that the Common Council approved a $195,000 expenditure last night to improve the sound system in Common Council
Wow.
chambers.
Wow.
I think we're gonna try to do it with a lot less money than that.
Project.
Board member announcement? Did you hear that?
Yes.
I mean, if I'm not, you know, I'll learn to speak more into the microphone here. Oh. No, I'm not taking it as a criticism. I'm just taking it as an opportunity for improvement. A grow, yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Did you want to
Oh.
mention this at all?
Yeah, so I worked on the annotated calendar. I met with Mrs. Shear last Friday, and we went over it. And I worked on it some more. And I passed out a copy to everyone. And it still needs work. One of the items on the calendar is November 11th, a board retreat for book study on white fragility. Is that a day, that's a Wednesday, and second Wednesday in November?
That was Monday.
It's a Monday.
It's a Monday, James.
It's Veterans Day.
Oh.
It must be a typo then.
The 13th.
It should be the 13th.
Been the
How did I
13th.
get that?
I don't know.
I think maybe, well, anyway, okay, so we'll change it to that. I told you it needed to be changed. So November 13th.
Do we have the facilitators for that?
Well, if it's a day that board members can attend, we'll look tomorrow for, check with the facilitators.
Yeah, Wednesdays are generally good, just
Because that's what we've already, Wednesdays.
Okay?
So the November 11th meeting was just moved to.
It's the 13th.
Should be November
It's supposed to be the
13th.
13th. It's a Wednesday.
And we have a facilities meeting on that day as well?
Yeah.
Most of our meetings are Wednesdays,
Okay.
retreats and board meetings.
Now, this is facilities.
Facilities. is
Oh,
facil-
facilities is on October the 8th. And the inspection started on the 22nd. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure of the November meeting. I think.
13th.
Yep.
Yeah.
Often we don't meet while we're in the middle of inspections. So inspections go from October 22nd to the 14th of November. Then we would meet again December and.
So no facilities meeting on the 13th?
We usually don't meet while we're still doing inspections.
Okay.
Because that's a commitment of many days for that.
So do you want to cancel the November 13th meeting?
Yeah, if we're gonna have a retreat and we're still doing the inspections, because we're out on the 7th and then again on the 14th.
Now, White Fragility is also available as an audio book. So anyone who doesn't want to read it, you can get an audio copy of it. Just let us know of that request. Another item on the calendar, which I've been advocating for, is a training on, a NISBA training on goal setting, which I've marked in here as March 11th, which is, I believe that's a Wednesday. I hope it's a Wednesday. So is that okay with everyone?
March 7th?
March 11th. March 11th.
11th.
So what does that mean,
Wednesday.
public? Why do you mean public?
Well, because that's their requirement, that it be advertised and it be public. Goal setting is public.
6 o'clock?
Yeah, that would be 6 o'clock. I don't have confirmation of that date from NISBA yet, but I got an inquiry Friday from someone at NISBA, and I'll get back to them tomorrow.
Mr. Shaughnessy?
Yes.
I believe we had agreed to take a look at our goals at the middle of the year, instead of always do it once at the end of the year. So can we add that to the January?
He can do
surveys
every month if you want.
No, it's just.
We could do.
Actually,
Whatever, I
January
don't know.
23rd, if you read across there, we have first quarter report on goals, district,
Okay.
superintendent, and board goals.
That's on a Thursday.
Okay, and then just right above it, we have a board retreat on the 16th. I think you must have meant the 15th is the Wednesday of January.
Would that make the 23rd, the 22nd?
Yeah,
If the 8th
because
is right?
Thursday is the 23rd.
Yeah, so the 8th is
The 9th. No?
the Wednesday, January 15th would be Wednesday, January 20. Well, that doesn't make sense.
We just go through with the calendar then.
January 15th is a Wednesday.
So that would be a board meeting, isn't it?
January 15th is Wednesday, and then January 23rd should be January 22nd. Which is
So
the
the
Wednesday.
board retreat on January 16th is actually January 15th.
January 15th, yes.
So it looks like, other than a few date change mistakes, which is just needs to be edited. This looks great. This looks like, it looks very full. I mean, it looks like we have a lot of good, reports, and they're kind of aligned with things that we had talked about before. We've got our retreats set up, and it looks pretty full.
The one conflict that there is, we have April 1st, was scheduled as a a budget-only one-item agenda, the 2020-2021 budget. And it's also the day that they've scheduled the BOCES annual meeting. And I don't know why they did that, because they usually don't do that on a Wednesday.
Did you talk to them about that?
I have to talk to Chris Farrell about that.
It's always a Monday.
Normally, it's always been Monday night.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
never
it's usually
Wednesday,
been
that's
Monday.
right.
I don't know why they did this. So, I mean, one of the problems with April is that there's the spring break is in April, and it really, is unusual and cuts up that month. And the other thing I want to ask is, if we can schedule something let's assume that we have an April 1st board meeting. And instead of a single item agenda, can we expand that? Because typically the budget presentations have taken an hour. And in one year, actually, we started at 6 o'clock and adjourned at 7 o'clock. Another year, we had an executive session for an hour, and then we had the board presentation for an hour, or the budget presentation for an hour, and we adjourned at 8 o'clock. It seems like we have a lot of work to do, and so taking one of our scheduled meetings and just spending an hour on the budget doesn't seem to be very efficient to me. So one of Dr. Padalino's goals is a report on later start times, and he scheduled that in by April 1st. So we could add that into that agenda.
Sounds good. It's a big night for you.
Okay, so if this is okay, I will fix it up. Oh, I also have to make sure I have the correct dates for KSQ and Mr. Clapham on their presentations. I believe I have the school reports on the correct dates that were memorandum from Mr. Verge. And okay, I have. Okay, so I'll fix it up and get it back to you. And update it as necessary as we go along. Board member announcements, or did we already go through that and wasn't that in? Public comment?
Did it?
So that leaves us for adjournment, I believe.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. That was unanimous?
Yes.
That was unanimous. Unanimous.